So today we want to pick up where we left off on Tuesday. At least I have, not where we left off on Tuesday. At least I have gotten my days of the week straight. Last night I told my class when I see you on Wednesday, not even realizing that last night was Wednesday. So I'm operating on a time warp apparently this week. But so on Tuesday we left off. We'd gone through a listing agreement, talked about agency contracts, and we left off with this idea of calculating commissions. How do we calculate our commission payments, right? And in your formula packet, you have this commission tree here, and we started to kind of talk about the idea of how this thing works, that it's designed to sort of give you a visual representation of how commissions get split up in a transaction, right? Everybody kind of remember, is that a fair assessment of where we left off the other day for everybody? Good. So today we want to actually get into doing the math of that. It's been a little while since we've done, math-based questions, and today we want to get back into the math and talk about commission splits and how we calculate those. And there's a few different ways you could be presented with these on a test, and we want to go through all of them so that you are familiar with it, so no matter how you get a commission question on the exam, you can deal with it. So we're going to be applying this several different times. Folks, this is not hard to draw. Don't make it harder than it is. It's just 3 triangles, and then you fill in the information as you encounter it, as you come to it. It will help to draw it out. I promise it will. It's not one of those things where I put it up here for my health. There are very few of those things, actually. I put them up here because I've found that visual tools help you do the math. Over the years, it just is one of those things that seems to correlate. The more you can put it into a sort of a visual representation for yourself, the better off you're going to be. So, remember, just kind of a reminder what we talked about the other day. Commissions, or total commissions, who are they paid to? Where are they coming in? To the listing side, correct? They're coming in to the listing side. It's the listing firm that's charging a total commission. But that's not the listing firm's commission necessarily, because most often what are we doing with that commission? We're immediately splitting it into 2 pieces, 2 sides of the transaction. And what do we call those 2 sides? With the side representing the seller, we call that the listing side, which is on the left side of your commission tree diagram here, and then the side that's representing the buyer we call the selling side, which is on the right side of your commission tree. So that first split is happening, that first split is happening right here in the middle of the tree. So you've got the total commission right here, so it might be 5% of the transaction, or 6%, or 7%, whatever they tell you in the question. That total commission is going to go on this line right here. And then the first split takes place between the listing side, representing the seller, and the selling side, representing the buyer. Now I've got a little reminder here. I've got 100% there. Why is that reminder there for you? Because these 2 splits have to be added up to equal what? 100% total. Because that's the total of the commission. So, right here, you might have, say, 60%. Well, if the listing side's keeping 60%, what is the selling side left with? 40%. Good. Now, we're not done splitting these commissions. Because often, in fact, almost always, once the commissions get to the individual firms in a co-brokered transaction, because looking at this is a co-brokered transaction. Would you agree with that? Once the commissions get to the individual co-broker firms, what are they going to do with them again? Split them again. We're going to have yet another split. Here you go. We're going to have another split, this time between the firms and who? And the individual brokers within the firm. So, we've got, we'll just take the listing side here and look at that. You've got a listing broker and the listing firm. And again, we've got this little 100% reminder because again, that split has to add up to be what? 100%. Same thing is happening over here on the selling side. You've got the selling broker's portion of the commission and the selling firm's portion of the commission, and those two things added together are going to add up to be what? 100%. I know it sounds repetitive. It's done that way for a reason. I'm telling you, if you try to tackle these commission problems without putting them in this diagram, you're going to get them wrong. I have just seen it over and over and over repetitively over years. I'm sorry, man, I thought I'd already given you. I've seen it. This helps. It really does. It really, truly helps you get the things put in the right place. So let's look at, and then these are just kind of reminders. Again, it's just a visual thing. Fill in the information as it's given and then try to do the math. Don't try to do the math before you fill in the information. So here's an example. Travis is listing 123 Main Street, and it sells for $400,000. Now, if I was reading that question, I would stop with that sentence, and I would start to fill in some information right away. We already know some important things. Travis is listing 123 Main Street. Where's Travis going to be on our commission tree here? He is the listing what? Broker. So I would go ahead and stop as soon as I get that piece of information and fill in Travis on the listing broker spot there. Does that make sense? And it sells for $400,000. Again, isn't that a piece of information we need to fill in the tree? Where's it going to go? All the way at the top, sales price. With a 6% listing commission. Again, another piece of information. What am I going to do with that 6%? That is the total commission. Notice that? 6% total commission. That's the total commission being charged on the transaction. His firm, URE, well, if he is a listing broker, then URE is going to be the what? Listing firm. So I would fill that in. Cooperates with firms. And the reason you want to fill in every tiny little piece of information, I have no idea what the heck they're going to ask me for at the end of this question. They could ask me what URE is going to be paid. They could ask me what Travis is going to be paid. I don't want to be hunting at that point in time to figure out who these people are. Does that make sense for you? If you filled it in as you get it, when you get to the question, it'll be very obvious where you're headed. Okay? So fill it in as you go. URE cooperates with firms representing the buyer. So just tell me, in general, where are you here for a post-licensing now? Next door.
Oh,
this is
okay.
pre-licensing. Unless you want to take all that test again. Now look at her run. She's like, I'm not doing that again. So where on the tree is that cooperation taking place? Where are we? Where's the level where we split? Are we up here, down here, or here in the middle? In the middle. That's the middle. When it talks about his firm, URE, cooperating with another firm, this is the cooperative part of the tree, right? So they cooperate with other firms representing the buyer by splitting the total commission equally with them. So what are we going to put on both sides here, the listing side and the selling side? Not 3%. Don't do the math for it. Stop thinking. There's no thinking involved here. If they're splitting it equally, what are they doing? They have to add, because if I put 3% here, 3% and 3%, what does that add up to? Does that add to 100? No. So what goes there? 50-50. 50-50. Again, no thinking allowed. Not in my class. Get you in trouble. Okay? So, 50-50 on each side. Travis gets 75% of all his commissions. Where was Travis, by the way? The listing broker. So we just with Travis, you put 75%. And if Travis is getting paid 75%, what is the listing firm getting? 25. You may as well go ahead and fill it in, because again, you don't know what you're going to be asked for. In this case, what do they want to know? What's Travis paid? Now, this just puts a bunch of lines showing you where those pieces of information are getting drugged to in the chart. Hopefully that makes a little more sense now that we've talked our way through it, right? So once you bring all that information over, this is what it looks like. We filled in that sales price of $400,000. We filled in that 6% commission. We've got the 50-50 split between the two firms. and we've got that Travis is paid 75%. So all I'm doing now is looking at what they're asking me for. What is Travis paid? Well, here's Travis, right? And they gave me the sales price, correct? So I'm starting at the top of the tree and I'm working to the bottom. In which case, what am I going to be doing all the way down? Multiplying. So start with the number they gave me, which is $400,000, and then work my way down to Travis through the tree. So 400,000, and every step's going to be multiplication. So 400,000 times, what's the first number I come into contact with? 6%. Times 50% times 75%, and it'll shoot out at the bottom. My total commission that Travis earns in that transaction is $9,000. Does that make sense for everybody? You're just going to be following it down from the top to the bottom. If they had asked, they didn't, but if they had asked for URE's commission, what would you punch in your calculator? 400,000 times 6% times 50% times 25%. See? The nice thing about the tree is once you got all the information filled in, can you quickly fire out everybody's money in that transaction? Because it's all there for you already. We good with this so far? Okay? Alright? So, here's another example. It says Karen of Go Realty is working as a buyer's agent. I'd stop right there. Because again, that's a piece of information, right? Where is Karen on the chart? So she's on the selling side, and she's the selling broker, right? And Go Realty is the selling firm. Everybody see how we picked that up already from the first sentence? Karen of Go Realty is working as a buyer's agent. That means we need to put her on the selling side of the transaction and her firm on the selling side of the transaction. Representing Sally, who's buying a home listed by Tom of HPW. Again, do we need to put that in the chart? Tom is the listing broker, and HPW is the listing firm, right? So we're filling it in. HPW compensates cooperating selling firms by offering 45% of the total commission. So again, which level of the tree do we use when we're doing the cooperation between the two firms? Middle. Middle. We're splitting it into sides, right? So HPW, which side are they on? The listing side, right? Right. HPW cooperates by compensating firms 45% of the total commission. So is HPW keeping the 45, or are they giving the 45 to the other side? They're giving it to the other side. So which side, listing or selling, are we going to put the 45% on? The selling side. So 45% goes over here on the selling side, which means what goes on the listing side? 55%. Go ahead and fill those numbers in now that you have them. Okay? It says Go Realty keeps 40% of all commissions earned by their brokers. So now what level of split are we talking about here? The split between
the listing broker and listing firm.
Listing? Is Go on the listing side? The selling side. We're talking about the split between the selling broker and the selling firm, correct? Right. Because Go's on the selling side. Is everybody good with that? So it says Go keeps 40%. So am I going to put the 40% with the selling firm or with the selling broker?
Selling firm.
Selling firm, which means the selling broker gets 60%. If Karen, and again Karen is who? Who is she? She's the selling broker, gets paid $54.50. So you're going to write that $54.50 right by Karen. So it's like selling broker Karen $54.50. It's all right there together. They're all the same person, right? Karen gets paid $54.50 for the transaction. What was the home sold for? So in this case, they didn't give me sales price at the top of the chart. They gave me commission, which is where? At the bottom, and they've asked me for sales price. So they've given me the bottom and they've asked me for the top. What does the arrow say I'm going to be doing in that case? I'm going to be dividing all the way back up, right? When they give me commission and ask me for sales price, I'm working from the bottom to the top, so it's going to be division all the way. So again, here's my 40,000 line showing me where everything got brought over. And this is what that looks like when you fill the numbers in. There's our 5% total commission at the top. Here's our split in the middle between HPW and Go. HPW is getting 55%, Go's getting 45%. And here's our split at the bottom with Karen getting 60% of the commission and her firm, and it says URE, it should say Go, sorry, that's a typo, getting the other 40%. So what's our math going to be? They gave us what? What number did they give us? Karen's commission, right? So we have to start with the number they gave us, which is the $54.50 commission. And what's our math going to be all the way back out? Is it multiplication or division? Division. And so now we're just finding our way from Karen back to the top. What's the first number we come in contact with Karen? 60%. So it's going to be $54.50 divided by 60%. What's the next number we come in contact with? 45. So divide by 45%. And then divided by 5%. Divided by 60, divided by 45, divided by 5. I get a sales price of $403,700. Yep.
Just out of curiosity, on the very first example that was completely, giving us all the information.
This one?
Yes.
Okay.
No, excuse me, the next one.
Right there? Okay, so this question, but
this question.
Okay. Yep.
Does not show the 5% total commission.
Oh, I didn't give you that, did I?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. See,
So I was just a little confused. Make sure I wasn't missing
no,
something.
you weren't missing something. That's a Travis brain fart. I didn't put the 5% total commission in there. I gave it to you on the next screen.
On the next one, yeah.
Yes, so sorry.
Okay.
That is my good
sure.
catch. Good catch. I'll have to fix that slide. No, I just completely left it out.
Okay.
I completely left it out.
I was trying to rack my brain around, like.
No. I just didn't give it to you. No, notice I brought it in here. I wrote it in this screen here, but not in the first.
That's why I was like, did I miss something here?
Nah, you missed that I was tired when I was doing this at some point.
That's okay.
What's funny is the class that have seen this before didn't catch that. So, right? Is everybody okay with this though? And you're just going to divide your way all the way back out to get to that sales price. That's the way the tree works. Okay? So, let's take that and extrapolate over to some examples. I passed out a little worksheet for you there. So, let's look at this worksheet. Everybody got it, right? It starts with number 1 is Bobby Buyer. Okay? Everybody got the worksheet?
Sam, sounds like a made-up name.
Sounds like a made-up name? You've never met a Mr. Buyer before? Come on. Bobby Buyer is represented by Kim in the purchase of a home in Clayton. All right. Stop right there. First of all, as soon as I recognize I'm doing a commission split question, get my pen out here. As soon as I recognize that I'm doing a commission split question, I'm going to do something important. I'm going to draw my little tree. And literally all it looks like for me is this. Okay? That's all I draw. Because that's all I'm going to need to do the splits. Bobby Buyer is represented by Kim in the purchase of a home in Clayton. Who is Kim representing? The buyer, correct? She's representing the buyer. So is she going to be on the listing side or is she going to be on the selling side? She's going to be on the selling side, correct? She is the selling broker. So we got Kim right here. She is a provisional broker with Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe Real Estate. So, firm, selling or listing firm is Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe. Selling firm. And she has a 55% commission split with her firm. So Kim has a 55% split, so I'm just going to write 55% there. Everybody okay with that? And then what else should I immediately do?
45%.
Put 45% for her firm, right? 45% goes over here with her firm. Upon closing of escrow on Bobby's new home, Kim was paid a commission of $4,550. So again, that's Kim's money. We're going to put it with Kim. She was paid $4,550. Assuming that the listing firm in the transaction was charging a 6% listing commission, where does that 6% total commission go?
At the top.
All the way up here at the top. And cooperating with selling brokerages by offering 45% of the total commission. So they are cooperating. The listing firm, which is on the left side, right, is cooperating with selling brokerages by offering 45%. So is the listing firm keeping the 45%, or are they giving the 45% to the other side? They're giving it to the other side. So the 45% is over here on Kim's side, the selling side, the buyer side of the transaction. What is the total purchase price of the home? So I'm just looking at, they gave me commission, correct?
Right.
And they're asking me for purchase price up here at the top. Does everybody agree with that? What I have to do is find a path from here up to there. And it looks like to me, it goes just like that. Would everybody agree with that line? That's my path to the top. And I have to use every number that I go through to get there. So what's the first number I'm going to punch in my calculator? 4550 divided by what?
55%.
55% divided by
45%.
45% divided by 6%. There are my math steps right there. Kind of put them in a box over here to separate them out. 4550 divided by 55% divided by 45% divided by 6%. Oops. 4550 divided by 55% divided by 45% divided by 6%. Oops. Not my calculator. This is why you gotta use your own calculator. Can't remember where the buttons are on this one. 6%. 306, 397.30. Is that what everybody comes up with for? No? Let's do it.
Maybe it's the calculator.
Could be
306.
397 and some change.
Yeah, 31 cents.
30 cents. Now remember, you're not using an equals button. When you use the percent button, you don't press equal. Is that the mistake?
I believe so.
Percent button handle, you just literally type it in just like that. 4550 divided by 55% divided by 45% divided by 6%. You type it exactly like that in the calculator. Is anybody not coming up with 306 and change there? Are we all okay? Good. Good. So let's take a look at the next one then. In fact, I'm gonna give you a second to work on it. I'll blank the screen out and draw it up here. And I'll give you guys a second to work on it. Blank the screen out if I can find the remote. I'll give you guys a couple minutes to work on it, and then we'll take a look at it together. assumptions. Do not assume that the listing side always keeps more money. Do not assume that the broker always gets the bigger side of a split. Read what they give you in detail. Make sure you know who is on what side of those splits. Assumptions will kill you on an exam, especially math assumptions. Yes, sir. Nope. Damn it. Got it out? No. Yep, you got it all set up right. So if you do the mash, you don't. Yeah, it's set up correctly. Everything's got form. So what's over here? You can fill this in. You wrote this in over here, but you didn't fill in. Don't you need the number? You can't get to the top without the number there. It's on the other side of this 60. Now it is. That's all I thought you were doing. Sure. So you got these splits here. Why is this number? No, well, no. Shouldn't. First of all, why are these numbers way up here? They should be down here. These numbers are half of that split, right? Okay. That 40% belongs to Renee, right? Put it with Renee. Don't put it up here. Because right here it looks like it's supposed to be in this section, right? Here's my point. When you put 40 here, you put the 60 here, what the heck is here? A big gaping hole. You gotta fill that hole in, don't you? Where's this 40% supposed to be? Where do the firms cooperate with one another? And so if that 40% is right there, what is here?
So it's 60 here, 40%.
It would if that was the correct split, but you need to reread those splits. Now it's at least in the correct place, but you got the wrong number. All right, let's take a look at it. So, what they tell us when we read through this, it says Renee is a broker with Sunrise Realty who earns a commission for her representation of what side of the transaction? She's on the listing side. She's representing the seller. So she's over there on the left-hand side. And I think everybody wrote that down correctly. Everybody that I saw had Renee and Sunrise on that side. If you didn't write it down, you universally got it wrong. I'm not saying that that's a trend or anything, but I think there were 3 people who didn't do the tree. 0 for 3. Not saying I'm a smart ass or anything, I'm just saying I'm smart. There's a reason I teach you the tool. Use the tool. I promise it helps. I get that you don't want to do it. I get it. I get it. I get it. Do it anyway. Do it anyway. It helps. Okay? So Renee is over there, listing broker with Sunrise Realty. What it tells us is she executed a listing agreement with the seller in which the seller was to pay a 5% brokerage commission. Where's that total commission going to go? All the way to the top. 5% at the top. Renee has a 40% split of all commissions earned with her firm. Who has a 40% split? Renee. Well, write the 40% on top of Renee's name. I see some of you got it floating off in the nether space somewhere. That doesn't help. It's Renee who has the 40%. And when you put the 40% with Renee, what does that leave for the other side? 60%. So write the 60% with Sunrise. Don't leave holes. When you get one half of a piece of information, fill in the other half, right? So Sunrise gets 60%. Sunrise Realty has a firm policy of paying a cooperating selling firm. What level is the cooperation taking place? Is that at the bottom, the top, or in the middle? Where's the cooperation? It's always in the middle, right? So Sunrise has a firm policy of paying the cooperating selling firm 60%. So is the 60% going to go on Sunrise's side, the listing side, or is it going to go on the other side? It goes on the other side. And when that 60% goes to this side, what does that leave on the Sunrise side of things? 40%. That was the most common mistake, was having the 60-40 split swapped. And you know why you do it? Because you make the assumption that they're going to keep the bigger piece. Don't make the assumptions. If it says Sunrise paid out 60%, then do it that way. Pay it out. Okay? All right? And so when Sally purchased a home listed by Sunrise with the help of a buyer representative, and Renee ended up with a commission check for $78.50, again, put the $78.50 with Renee, what was the sales price of the home? So your math that you're left with is $78.50. You always have to start with the number they gave you. And are we going to be multiplying or dividing on this one? Dividing, because they gave us commission and asked us for sales price. So $78.50 divided by the first percentage you come in contact with, working your way back up, is 40%. Divided by the second percentage you come in contact with is also 40%. Divided by, what's the last percentage you come in contact with at the top? 5%. Just divide your way back out and you get $981,250 as a sales price for that home. All right? Number 3. Travis is purchasing a home in Chapel Hill with Diane of Keller Williams as his buyer representative. The home is listed by HPW for a 7% total commission, and HPW splits their brokerage fees evenly between the listing side of the transaction and the selling side of the transaction. If Diane has an agreement paying her 75% of all commissions earned, what is her firm's compensation for the transaction if the home sells for $472,000? So go ahead and work on that one. I'm going to blank it out again, and I'll walk around and look after I do it. Same thing. Where's Diane? You shouldn't be guessing. That should be the first thing you should fill in. Travis is present at home with Diane. LOE as a buyer representative. Stop. Fill in Diane. Which side is the buyer representative? Okay. And then Diane work for it. Travis is present at home. That we're gonna get Diane of Diane of Keller Williams. Alright, why do you have them on the same side as a split? Isn't this where they're splitting their money? Right? So mark it out there. Now, okay, and it's listed by HPW. Stop. Where do you go listing from? No. Okay. Percentage of co-information. Yes, ma'am. Let's get it broken for the unit. You got that, right? Okay. Now, Diane has an agreement paying her 75%. Where's Diane? 75%. You go. What is her firm's compensation? So who are they asking for? They're asking for this right here, right? So now just follow 72, 7, 50, 25. Good. Yeah. Good. Good. Getting better. Getting better. That look familiar? Once you set it up, it says that they're paying $472 for the property and the total commission is 7%, right? It's a 50-50 split between the firms. They didn't say 50-50, but they said it was evenly split. And so there's a cooperation, 50% in the middle. And it said Diane had a contract paying her how much? 75%, which means her firm must be keeping 25%. Then ultimately, what did they ask us for? How much the firm is making. So that left us with 472 times 7% times 50% times 25% for a total of $4,130. That's what her firm is going to make off of that transaction. And they are the what firm? Selling firm. They are the selling firm. Good. Good. All right. Number 4 says Sam is working as a buyer's agent representing Tony in the purchase of his first home. The local MLS has a home listed at 587 Elm Street, which Tony is interested in buying. The MLS states that the listing firm, Sunshine Realty, is offering cooperating selling firms 2.5% of the total sales price as compensation for their services. What will be the total selling side commission if Tony purchases 587 Elm for $462,000? Now, this one has given it to you in a different way. Screen here. It says that, and we can still draw our commission tree just to keep track of the transaction. So, draw my 3 triangles. Going through this one. It says Sam is working as a buyer's agent. Well, if Sam's a buyer's agent, he's over here. Right? He is a selling broker. Representing Tony in the purchase of his first home. The local MLS has a home listed at 587 Elm Street, which Tony is interested in buying. The MLS listing states that the listing firm, Sunshine Realty, is offering cooperating selling firms 2.5% of the total sales price. Well, this is where you have to write in the 2.5%. Where's the cooperation level?
In the middle.
In the middle, right? And is the listing firm keeping the 2.5% or are they paying the 2.5%? They're paying the 2.5%. Would you agree with that? Okay? And the sales price is $462,000. The same thought process still holds, folks. You have to start with what they give you. They're asking you for what? The total selling side commission. Well, which side of the transaction is the selling side?
Right.
They want to know what's the total amount of money being paid to this side over here. Would you agree with that? Well, the only way to get to that side from there is to go straight through what number? 2.5%. So it's just as simple as 462 times what? 2.5% is going to be the total selling side commission. We don't know what the split's going to be and what Sam's actually going to make. They didn't tell us the information we would need for that, and they didn't ask us, correct? So all we needed to know is 462 times 2.5%. And that leaves us with a total selling side commission I come up with of $11,550. No? Check me, I could be wrong.
It's
That's what I got.
Yep. Good? Is everybody okay with this $11,550 here for a total selling side? Again, you still can fill the information in on the tree even though they didn't give you all the information. It still works to keep it isolated between a listing side and a selling side. Alright? Number 5, in question number 3 above, what will Tony earn if he has a 60% split with his company? Well, I'm just going to keep working on the same one I've got right here. I'm going to erase.
Sam, though. Tony's the client.
Oh, sorry, it does say, yeah, Tony's not going to earn anything. Sam's going to earn the money, right? So what will Sam earn? Tony's not going to earn anything but a house, all right? So, what additional information did they give us here?
60%.
60% that goes to the broker, correct?
Yes.
Which of course leaves 40% over here if we needed that number. So now, we've just added one wrinkle to the thing. If we want to get to Sam, we've got to go from between 462 down to what? 2.5 and then through the 60%. So, instead of just 462 times 2.5, it's going to be 462 times 2.5 times what? 60%. So, I do that, 462 times 2.5% times 60%. 6,930, $6,930.
Yep.
See, I think the thing that helps with the tree is it starts to divide them out in your mind into little pieces, and then no matter where they start to ask what little piece, you can quickly pull it and visualize it and say, okay, they're talking about right here, and pull from right there. How are we feeling so far about this? Pretty good? Pretty good with commission math? Everybody okay with this last question? Good. Good. All right? Now, we need to talk about a different type of math called seller net math. So I'm going to switch back over to the slides now. So if you want to pull your slides back out for this chapter. There we go. So if we go back over to the slides, we're going to talk about something called Well, first we need to talk about calculating net commissions and then talk about seller nets. So a net commission is different than a percentage-based commission. We talked about these the other day. Remember at the end we said net listings? Remember when we had this conversation briefly the other day? The real estate commission doesn't like you to do them. Does anybody remember what the main characteristic of a net listing was?
When the borrower only asks for a specific amount, they want to make a specific amount.
When the seller says, this is what I need to sell it for, anything above that is your what? Your commission. So you could potentially see a net commission math question on the exam. So it says example here, Carlos is a broker affiliate of XYZ Realty and takes a $175,000 net listing, which then sells for $185,000. So what's his commission going to be? His commission is just going to be what? The difference between the two. Alright? Just the difference between the two. So using that information, go back over to your little worksheet that we were just working on and look at number 6. Number 6 says Travis wishes to net, oh I'm sorry, never mind, we can't look at number 6 yet. I got ahead of myself. We need to talk about seller net pricing first. I'm ahead of myself. I'm trying to rush you out of here today. I'm sick of looking at you. Seller net pricing. This is definitely a piece of math you're going to see on the exam, I would imagine. I mean, obviously I don't know what's on the exam, but I feel like this is one that they would probably stress on the exam that you know how to do. Because this is a very real-world type scenario in our business. A lot of times sellers come to us and we're not doing a net listing, but could a seller come to you and say, I need to get this amount out of the transaction? You think that's a fairly common thing that a seller might say? Why? Why would they say that? They got to pay off the mortgage, they got to buy a new house, they need a down payment for the new house, they've got to have a certain amount of money to move. They come to us a lot of times and they say, listen, I don't know what my house is worth, but I know I can't sell it unless I get X, whatever that number is that they have in mind. We call that a seller net. Net means after we've deducted what? Expenses. So give me some expenses that are paid out of a transaction from a seller's perspective. Commission is a big one, right? What else? Closing costs. What else? Paying off their loans. So the net that a seller has in a transaction is the amount of money they have left over after we've deducted all those things. How does everybody feel about that kind of a definition? Okay, does that make sense for everybody? So, sometimes we may be given math problems where they say the seller has these expenses and they need to net this amount of money. So look at that number 6 on our handout. We're not going to do it this second, but I just want to show you what I'm talking about. On that number 6, it says Travis wishes to net $125,000 on the sale of his home, which is listed with URE at a 6% commission. He must pay off his outstanding mortgage balance of $220,000, closing costs of $5,000, and a mechanic's lien of $4,200. For what amount must he sell the property? I don't usually start off by telling you the way you can't do something, but I'm going to do it this time, and I hope the stubborn among you will listen. You can't add these numbers together and then multiply that times 6% and add that number in and say, I'm done. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. It will not work that way, but it will be an answer choice on the exam if you do it that way. And so when you do it that way, you're going to think what? I'm right, because there's the answer. No, no, no. You can't do it that way. Here's what you have to do. And I'll give you the reason you can't do it that way. Because when you just add those numbers together, you can't take 6% of that number because that number is not the sales price. That's not the true commission. When you take 6% of that number, you're taking 6% of some number less than the sales price. Does that make sense for everybody? That's why it doesn't work that way. So, here's what you have to do. And it's really simple, actually. you group together the dollars, you group together the percentages. So, in this question, and I think I've got an example here. Let's use the example I got up here and then we'll come back to this one. It says Thomas is selling his home and needs to net $45,000 on the sale after all expenses are paid. He must pay off his mortgage loan of $172,000 as well as $1,200 in other closing costs. He's agreed to compensate his listing firm with 5% of the gross sales price. For what price should Thomas sell the property to meet his needs? So, let's start grouping things together. Let's first group the cash. Can we add all the cash together?
Yeah.
That's easy to do, right? Well, the first piece of cash we need to group is the amount of money he needs, right? That's our starting point. He needs how much money? 45 grand. That's where we started. He also needs enough cash to do what? Pay the mortgage, so we added that $172,000. He's got to pay those closing costs of $1,200. If we add all that together, we need at least $218,200. But we need that much money after we've paid who? Us. We haven't been paid yet. So now we have to deal with our money, which is not in dollar format, but in what format? Percentage format. I've drawn you a pie chart here. Pie chart always represents what percentage of something? 100%. And I've taken a slice out of that pie, that commission slice. How big is that slice of the pie? 5%. So if I take a 5% slice out of that pie, what percentage is left of the pie? 95%. The way you do this math question is simply to take the cash that you need and divide it by the percentage that's remaining of the total sales price. So in this case, how much cash do we need? $218,200. And what percentage is remaining of the sales price after we take the commission piece out? 95. So it's going to be $218,200 divided by 95%. So in order to get that seller at least $45,000, we've got to sell his house for $229,684.21. Anything less than that, and we're not going to meet his net. Anything more than that, and we're going to exceed his net. We're going to go over, which is fine. I'm pretty sure he's okay with that, because he needs to get at least this amount. So would you say that that's useful in the real world to be able to show a seller, this is what we have to sell your house for? If you told me you need $45,000 and we got to sell your house for this number right here, and no less. That way, would that help them evaluating offers?
Yes.
Yeah. Everybody good with that? Okay? So, look at number 6. And I want you to work on number 6. And I'm going to walk around and look at it. I'm going to blank the screen and I'll do it. And then we'll come back and look at it. So, read through number 6 and refer back to the one that we just went over as an example. You love math. It's the only thing that gets you paid.
Oh, yeah. I love math now, actually. Math and science would find out of me alone.
Not. Switch. You got the right total, you did it correctly. Maybe you typed it in wrong. Good. Everybody's doing well on this. Made it too easy, I guess. That or we're smart this morning. 376, 808, 809, somewhere in that neighborhood. So if we sold it for 377, would we be good to go?
We good.
Everybody okay with that? That's a seller net question. I mean, really, the key to this one is just remembering the trick to it, right? There's no, don't fall back into that habit of, well, I'm going to add them together and multiply by, no. Add them together and divide by the remaining percentage. That's the way you always do a seller net question, right? And you'll always be correct. Now, even if they gave you two percentages, like they said, what should Travis list it for? And he was going to charge a 6% commission and he needed 5% negotiating room. Well, that would just be another piece coming out of the pie, wouldn't it? If we took another 5% piece out, we wouldn't have 94%, we would have 89%. And that's what you would divide by. So it's all about grouping the cash and then grouping the percentages and dividing by what's left over. That's the way you're always going to handle those seller net questions. All right, go ahead and do number 7 as well. That's a net listing question, so you ought to be able to handle that at this point.
Overpriced realty.
Yep, that's a good firm to hire. You feel real comfortable when you hire them. Honesty in advertising. Alright, if you set this up on the commission tree, they didn't give you any cooperative level, did they? There was nothing about cooperating with another firm, was there? So is there gonna be anything in the middle of the tree? No, and that's just fine. We can leave that blank. We don't have to cooperate with other firms. You just leave it blank. It's not gonna hurt a thing. Did they give us a percentage of sales price as a way to calculate commission? They gave us a percentage of sales price?
I don't see that either.
They didn't. What they gave us was a net listing, right?
That was-
So in a net listing, how do we calculate the total commission? It's just the difference between the sales price and the net listing amount, right? A net listing is when the seller says, I gotta have, and how much did they say they had to have in this case? 150, 160, 160. But we listed it for what? Or sold it for 175. So what's the total commission gonna be on this transaction? $15,000. So instead of putting a percentage at the top up there, I just put the total commission at the top. Is everybody okay with that? Total commission is, instead of some percentage, the total commission is just $15,000. And then the only split they gave us was Anthony's split with his firm, and he gets how much? 60%. And his firm got 40%. So they want to know how much Anthony got paid. All I've got to do is take the $15,000 that they gave me and multiply times 60%, which is Anthony's split. And he's going to earn $9,000 in that transaction. Okay? Alright, here's a deal I'll make with you. Go ahead and do number 8 on your own, and when you get it right, you can have a break. Nope. Yep. Turn that over. Take a nice break. Yes, ma'am. I might not be testing your reading comprehension skills as much as your math skills in this question. Some people might say trick question. I say there are no such things as trick questions unless you get tricked. Think about the different types of listing agreements. Exclusive right to sell, right? You get paid no matter where the buyer goes. Exclusive agency listing, you get paid if you produce a buyer or another firm produces a buyer. The seller could sell it themselves and not pay a commission, right? In an open listing, you only pay if your firm produces the buyer. Read that and see what's going on. Good. Because what? Look at the definition of an open listing. and then apply those circumstances to what you've got right there. So people get paid on an open listing.
Exactly. They're gonna ask us on the test too.
This is funny,
That's
right?
right, because
Exactly
the
the
listing
kind of
firm,
shit that
the
we're gonna
firm
see on
only
the
gets paid
test.
what happens.
If they sold the property.
And I'm gonna go
If they
and
sell the
answer
property,
it.
if they sell
Like
the
I did.
So how much is the commission?
It's a
That's
big zero.
funny.
Because the little birdie's gonna start flying over here. And
Yeah,
I'm
that's
like,
all.
oh,
That's
little shiny
funny.
bird over there.
I just thought that's funny.
What you got?
0.
That's it.
That's funny.
Talk to me about an open listing.
I got it right now.
That's okay.
An open
I was waiting for me to.
I mean, I'm ready to fill the question. Right?
See, this
I already
is,
feel
so
it.
I do this because this is exactly the kind of thing they would do to you on the test, because they're not, this is not a math question, right? It is a theory question disguised as a math question. An open listing agreement is a listing in which the listing firm only earns a commission if that firm produces a buyer. If you look in here, did the listing firm produce the buyer, or was it produced by an outside firm? It was produced by an outside firm. So therefore, did the listing firm earn a commission at all? The answer is no. Those percentages don't matter one bit because they didn't earn a single dollar in that transaction because of the open listing. So that's, I put that in there specifically to show you that when you see on a test, if you see anything other than exclusive right to sell, that should be like a warning flash, you know, like I need to really look and see what's going on here to see if we've actually earned a commission. Okay? If you didn't know that open commission meant that we would only get paid if we produced the buyer, then you probably need to go back and look at the different types of listing agreements, the exclusive right to sell, the exclusive agency, and the open. In the exclusive right to sell, when has the listing firm earned a commission?
An exclusive right to sell.
Exclusive right to sell. Under what circumstances?
Anytime there's a closing.
Any buyer from any source, we've earned a commission, right? And that's pretty much the way we've handled all these questions so far. Haven't every one of these commission questions basically been the exclusive right to sell? Yeah. In an exclusive agency listing, when has the listing firm earned a commission?
When the agency, when that firm.
Any agency.
When my firm or any other real estate firm produces a buyer. So even in an exclusive agency, would there be a commission earned in this question?
Yes.
Yes, right? Because in exclusive agency, what's the only situation where we don't pay a commission? If the the seller brings the buyer, right? The seller produces the buyer themselves. But then in this open listing, the only time the firm has earned a commission is if that firm produces the buyer. And in this case, because it was two different firms, who would get paid here? What firm would get paid?
You done good.
We Done Good, and they didn't ask us what We Done Good got paid. They asked us about the other firm.
So the open listing will be always through agency, right? If you got paid.
If you get, well, that's a good question. So let me repeat the question and let's think on it for a second. The question is, in open listing, the only way I can get paid is dual agency. That's close. Can I produce the buyer without it being dual agency?
Yes.
Seller sub-agency. So it would have to be either seller sub-agency or dual agency. My firm could produce the buyer, and that buyer would be what? Unrepresented. That's what seller sub-agency means. So the two options to get me paid are, I brought a buyer and that buyer is not represented, or I brought a buyer and I also represent the buyer. Those are the two instances where you could get paid under an open listing. What instances would you not get paid would be the seller brought the buyer or another firm brought the buyer. You would not get paid in those two cases. Okay, everybody all right with that? All right, so now let's really take a break.